West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
I heard the news. I was starting to get these texts come in from friends, and it just said, a few words said Tucker Carlson. I thought, okay, maybe it was the 60 Minutes episode that they're talking about, and I started to write back, oh yeah, I saw the Epps thing, this is terrible, I was there while we were doing this kind of coverage, and they said, no, he's fired. And it was literally, what, are you sure? Because obviously, you know, I'm at the center of a lot of this, and it felt surreal, and there were a lot of mixed emotions that went through my head. There were feelings at first like, yes, and then also the reality that you don't want anything bad to happen to anybody, but at the same time, Tucker and his executive producer, Justin Wells, who was also fired, really were responsible for breaking me and making my life a living hell. So there is a feeling of justice, but it's only partial.
Why did you go work for him?
I was working with Maria Bartiromo at the time. I knew as a female that I would never get the executive producer title there, working on that show. The opportunity came up to go to Tucker, and it was a promotion. I would be overseeing a team. I would also be overseeing 3 different platforms. And I liked the staff, honestly, when I interviewed with them. And I was hoping that it would be more professional, and what he was portraying on air was just a show. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case.
So when do you realize that?
Immediately. I show up first day of work, and I know that this is a popular one. It's been widely publicized. There are literally pictures like this big of Nancy Pelosi in a bathing suit in Europe, plastered all over. There was even one on my computer screen for the temporary computer I had to use, and I had to take it down just to work. Within a few days there, I was called into Justin Wells' office with Alex McCaskill, who was a senior producer as well, and asked if Maria was having an affair with Kevin McCarthy. It was just, I was shocked. I couldn't even believe it. I was floored.
Let's go through some of what you allege in your lawsuit. It is this culture of misogyny. How did that manifest in a more personal way?
I'm tough. I have a thick skin, obviously, having been through all I've been through in the last month, but it's hard to take day in and day out, which is a big part of why I'm speaking out now, to let people know that it's not okay, and the impact of bullying when it's done day after day after day. And very quickly I spoke out. For example, early on they had Andrew Tate on the show, and I raised my hand and I said, we have to be very mindful that this is 2 white males together. And I used the example of Gayle King and R. Kelly, saying that she could go in a different direction with that interview, that I felt Tucker couldn't. And they weren't happy about that, because they wanted to be a bro fest. They were all laughing about how fun it would be to go to Romania and hang out with him. They liked his messaging. So whenever I said something like that, it put a target on my back, and gradually I was shut out of meetings. I was mocked. I was eventually demoted. That's how it played out for me. And it got worse and it got worse and it got worse every time I spoke out.
What was your experience with anti-Semitism?
It's interesting because I've never experienced it in my life until now. It was nothing I ever really thought of. And it started sort of around the holiday period. I had a colleague who was Israeli, and they do this thing with HR where you become this global ambassador for Fox for the show, and you get $10,000 essentially to represent the program as a diversity ambassador, and the whole staff was white. So they recommended that he be that person because Israelis and Jews are minorities. And they first suggested it in a meeting, and then they brought it to him. I think he was shocked. And they said he could use that money to buy pizza for the whole staff for a year. Now, I know HR claims they did an investigation, and they said that some of these things were said, but the feelings about it in the office were different than me. It was said, but they weren't offended.
What is it about the culture at Tucker? Because listen, as someone who covers him and covers him as a force that threatened democracy until Friday night, it falls in this category of shocking, not surprising. What was for you, as someone inside Fox, shocking about the culture at Tucker coming from Maria's show?
It was very out in the open. What you see is what ends up on air. People are believers who are there. I found it difficult to cover the kind of stories that they wanted me to cover. I wasn't expecting it. Maybe I should have. That's what some people say. But for example, right toward the end of my time there, when the January 6th tapes were coming out, Tucker was very set on finding an FBI person who was implanted in the crowd and spinning this conspiracy that they were ultimately the ones responsible for the Capitol attack, not Fox News, as they're about to go into the Dominion trial, that it was really, the FBI that set up this thing, not Fox telling the American people that the election was rigged and the voting machines did it. And when I went back to them and said, look, there's no conspiracy theory here. I called this attorney that's representing one of the Proud Boys, and he flat out told me on 2 occasions, there is no conspiracy. Get away from this stuff. This is dangerous. Tell Tucker to stop. I'll come on your show and represent my client, but I absolutely will walk off if he asks me this. And the response was, well, find somebody else. Tucker is really intent on this. And that wore on my mental health, too, because by that time, I had really begun to connect the dots that the programming that we were putting on the air every night was not just generating business, but also generating hatred in the audience. And after January 6th, I had this wake-up moment that this is hurting people. People are getting angry, and people are acting out on that anger, and this is not okay, and I don't want to be part of that.
I guess some people who have kept an eye on what he's done would say that you might have known that before, right? You go to work for Tucker in 2022?
Yes, in the summer.
So what is it about? I mean, do you feel like, and I want to ask you about the tapes. I mean, did he ask you guys to look through the tapes looking for Mr. Epps? Is that what you're suggesting, or other FBI informants?
I was not part of the team that looked through the tapes. My story is long, but I had been on an emergency medical leave due to the abuse that took place on that show. So when I came back, they knew I had legal representation, so was not including me in the viewing of the tapes. But they were having me just look for a lawyer of a Proud Boy that was willing to say that there were FBI informants infiltrating the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers.
And none of them were?
Not that I could find, no.
I want to go back to what causes some of your stress, I think. It is around your Dominion deposition. Can you take us through those events?
So following the 2020 election, people started reaching out in early 2021 for informal meetings about our workflow. That went on for about a year. In early 2022, we had a meeting where they said that we're going to want to take both of your phones and take an image of them, which is scary. They made me hold them up, show that it was forever, that I was saving all my texts. They said, you're only going to need them from October through March. I said, I have personal stuff on personal phone. Oh, don't worry, we don't want any of that. But it was still, remember, I was like sick that day that they took the phones. I also said to them at that point, I have this old company phone. I used it through the whole period, screen smashed, got rid of it in April 2021. Do you want that? Nah, just keep it for safekeeping. So I turned over my devices in March. In June, I had a second meeting where I was summoned to Fox, and they kind of scrolled through my phones and asked if I had a Signal app, which I deleted simply because Marie and I used it for about a week. Didn't really take, got rid of it. I'm a little type A. Obviously, I keep things very organized. If I don't want it, I get rid of it. And I said to them, this seems really serious. Where is this going? What are you going to need from me? Oh, you might be deposed, but it's going to be no big deal. Fox is going to win this, slam dunk. July, I find out I'm going to be deposed. Scared to death, obviously. Walk in there in August. I believe the date was August 10th for my first session with Winston Strawn and the Fox attorneys. First thing I say when I walk in, Marie at this point, going back, has told me that she's hired her own representation who has copies of all of our text messages and emails. So the first thing I say out of the gate is, Maria has her own attorney. Do I need one? No. It's just, they complicate things. You know, Steve Ducey had one. He was in a few days ago, and they feel like they need to earn their keep, so they just ask questions to make money. It just complicates the process. No. Can I take notes? No. So I'm given this, no need, no big deal. And they give me this speech about how it's a slam dunk First Amendment case. The whole thing is so stupid. I say, am I in trouble? No. Get this big binder about that big, black, with all of these exhibits of text messages, my LinkedIn page. I mean, it looks quite serious to me. And we start going through it, and they start coaching me. Now, when I'm in there, I decide this is an opportunity to talk about some of the chauvinism and problems I've been having on Sunday Morning Futures. Let me get it on the record with the Fox attorneys. I think that's important because I didn't want to go to HR. I didn't trust them, to be honest. So this is a way of me setting a record with Fox. So I start telling these things very, very early on. And it seemed like they had a plan, and I screwed it up. It's not what they wanted to hear.
What was their plan?
They were expecting me to, I think, they flat out said, we expected you to be best friends with Maria. And we were very close. But by that point, we were disagreeing on the integrity of the election and what had taken place in 2022 and some other theories that she had. And there was definitely tension.
And there are records of that?
And there are records of all of that. I had been asked to spy on her by the Fox bosses and report back on what she was doing, which caused a lot of stress. And that was part of the reason I went to Tucker as well. I just physically and emotionally couldn't take it. And when I go back and listen to some of those tapes now that I hear the stress in my voice and how depleted I was. And
so you spied on Maria for your Fox bosses?
Yes. I not spied. I would tell them what she was doing. If there were things that concerned me, spy is the wrong word, that I had handled in the past myself because we had a good relationship and can work it out together. I reported those things because I became very paranoid about my job because I had been shaken down by multiple executives at the company.
It is Wednesday, the 26th of April of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? And you know, in this new a-go-go society of Christian porn stars whose apparently their destiny was that God put them on earth to enjoy sex. Well, why do we have to look at it? All right. Well, welcome to Wednesdays, and this is the day that we kind of kick around the idea that a separation of church and state would be a good thing. While at the same time using it as a cover for the fact that it is really the day of a lovely egg dish with an velvety hollandaise sauce. Just velvety. Okay. Do we speak in codes here? I don't know. Well, the pollen wars continue their nasal assault upon my nasal cavities. Oh, God. Can you tell? I love this time of year. But do I love suffering? No. Oh, boy. So, speaking of which, good news, somewhat. Our little dog, the Yorkshire Poodle Ginger here, my mom's dog, is still alive this morning. And that's, I don't know. I consider that to be good. She kind of perked up a little bit. When I say perked up, she, lifted her head and, got up on her front legs and looked around and wanted me to pet her and pick her up. I took her outside. She didn't want to do her business. I couldn't get her to drink water. After we do this here, I have some a liquid medicine that I have to jam into her jaw and squeeze it down her throat, and that's supposed to be an appetite stimulant. Then I have some other medicine that's supposed to go in. I do that liquid thing with a little syringe twice a day, and then 4 small meals in which I scoop up a little bit of this granular stuff and put it in 4 small meals. But I'm having a hard time getting her to eat. She doesn't want to eat. And she's not really going to the bathroom, and that's probably because her kidneys are doing their thing. So, I don't know what to do. Love her, but I suppose that terrible decision that we do with our pets, I consider it to be terrible. Other people say, well, you don't want them to suffer. I know. All right. She's a good little dog. Every living thing that I've ever come across has some sort of personality. Isn't that weird? Are they supposed to have personalities? I thought they were supposed to be just some sort of, I don't know, animatronic beings that just existed for our entertainment. I always thought, if that was the case, I hate the idea of some robot eating my ass. So maybe it's not a robot. And if it is, take care. All right. She has quite the personality, as all of our furry friends do. It makes it hard to just write it off, just another pet gone. I'll get another one. I don't know. I never liked that idea. Replacing. I can just throw that one away and get another one. Well, that's nice. But we do still have the giant bulldog, the English bulldog Gunner, snoozing sous chef, which he's doing his job right now at my feet. He's such a good worker. Okay, what has happened out there in the world? Well, I guess Trump started, I guess they started the trial today, seated a jury yesterday. This judge is no nonsense. Oh, he doesn't suffer fools, apparently, and we'll see how that goes. It's just a civil procedure. He maligned her good character because he's a pig. Jeez. And everybody knows what a pig Donald Trump is. All right? Everybody. You couldn't have lived in New York and not known what a pig that guy is. He broadcast it everywhere. Did he know that if he did that, then he would taint every jury pool in the whole world so no one could judge him, except the people who kiss his ass? They're the only people that judge him, and guess how they judge him? I love kissing his ass. If he goes away, I don't get to kiss his ass. I have to kiss his ass. Boy. I don't know. I guess we deserve it, don't we, as a society here, an American society? Conspicuous consumption. Over just really, actually, low-quality type stuff. we're going to hoard as much of this consumer product as we can because it'll show that we are wealthy. Really, does it? Where's the healthy and wise part in that scenario? Well, did you know that way back in the day, like during the Renaissance and before, that if you had a tan, that was actually a sign of being part of the lower classes because you had to work out in the sun? Whereas the landed gentry and better got to stay inside, the dark, thick walls of the castle, protected by the damaging effects of the sun. They're being cooked alive. We don't want that. Now it's turned around. Now, to show that you live a life of leisure, you have a tan. Back in the day, a life of leisure, you were like, if you were in the northern parts of the world, being white as a ghost was showing you, the world, that you didn't have to do shit. Okay. Some people even use makeup to make them look like even whiter than they were. I get no sun. All right. Now everybody has to have a tan. They even spray it on. Some of them think it should look like it's orange. I don't know. Is that color blindness? Maybe. He wanted to be blind to color because he didn't want to have any black people on the gaming floor while he walked through the casino. I don't want to see him. And the only people counting his money had to wear a yarmulke. I don't make this stuff up. That's from his words. That's him. And apparently there's a sizable chunk of America who thinks that's just perfectly fine. Okay. I guess the good old days is going to be the good old Klan days too, apparently. Pardon me. Or worse. I still like the idea of having allergies and calling it a war of pollen, performing like, I don't know, a nasal assault. Yeah, that's what it is. Because I'm suffering it. Plus, my throat is scratchy. My eyes were kind of like scratchy. I did my typical warm water wash to try to get as much of that stuff off of me, and I just wash it away. At least it's psychosomatic, and I think that it works for a little bit. The power of the mind. Speaking of the power of the mind, we do have a show in mind for you here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. So why don't we address that instead of all this personal? Oh, well. Now, I got to tell you, I am a little bit ambivalent about this Abby Grossman lady. Okay? Some people might say that, she made a bet. I don't think that just because you went into a company that was dedicated to making people's lives miserable, you would think that she might have some sort of forethought about what that might mean. Meaning, what happens when they want to make your life miserable? I always like going and working for companies that want to make people's lives better. Because what would happen? Oh wow, they might make my life better, just like they're trying to do with their product. What a terrible thing. No, you're working for a company that just wants to make a hellscape so they can make money. And it was okay, I just liked her idea of I was going to be an executive producer on Carlson's show. I wasn't going to do that in Maria's. I was never going to be exec producer on Maria's show. And I was thinking, if you put the human side to the Ministry of Truth in 1984, I think it would look like Fox. The hierarchy and corporate structure of Fox is the Ministry of Truth, and you would still have all these backstabbing social corporate climbers. I don't know. Is that supposed to be a bad thing? I always thought that was supposed to be a bad thing. Apparently it's not. Caring for other people is a sign of weakness. I keep forgetting that. Jeez. I thought that those who had the luck to be, I don't know, physically capable, financially, mentally, emotionally capable of helping other people, maybe we should. Instead of, if I help another person, it means I'm not going to be able to get another gigantic yacht bigger than that's ever been before, bigger than the Ark. Bring in foreign currency 2 by 2. March them right up the gangway into my coffers on the ship. Where did we? I thought I was going to tell you about the show. I am. Poor little Ginger. She made me lose my bearings because she needs looking after. Okay. On the rest of the menu, in the Bistro Cafe as we begin here, a My Pillow Guy back supervisor in election conspiracy-addled Shasta County, California, was served recall papers at a raucous public meeting. It's starting to fall apart. It always happens in MAGA land. Federal prosecutors allege in newly unsealed charges that a 20-year-old neo-Nazi tried to firebomb an Ohio church to stop an upcoming drag performance. And Twitter star Yashar Ali still owes $230,000 to a Getty heir. Now a debt collector wants his income. After the break, we move to the chef's table where the foreign minister of war-mongering Russia whined that the European Union is becoming militarized at a record rate and showing very little difference with NATO. Wow. The EU and NATO signed just some sort of pact that, we're all part of this alliance and we don't like the idea that Russia invaded Ukraine, and now Lavrov is whining about it. What do you expect? Oh, and here's some good news. Former New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has been appointed to dual fellowships at the Harvard Kennedy School. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page there is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Across from that chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln, to the left and down just a skosh is the link to our Patreon page. And you know what that means, yes. If you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really does help us pay our bills. So please do. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. Follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable at Justice Putnam. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes 10 minutes before showtime. And sometimes I get that actually posted up on social media before the show. Lately, I haven't. But you can always find the show notes and links by going to my social media pages I just announced, and you can find them quite easily. Oh, yes. And, of course, the show notes and links is where the real reportage is. None of this adding and subtracting that we like to do here. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, such as it is, you can do so at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts. Please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. I swear to God, I'm going to start a company called Etc. just so I can make a bunch of money. Then somebody will say, you can't use that. It's been copyrighted. I'm all, it's been typeset too. All right. Enough of that rigmarole. Let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And it comes from the SF Gate, which is part of the San Francisco Chronicle online presence. Eric Ting brings us this first offering. Shasta County is moving forward with an extremely expensive plan to hand count all ballots in future elections. The Board of Supervisors voted yesterday, Tuesday, to authorize the hiring of 7 new county employees who will help facilitate the switch from machine counting to hand counting in what amounts to the latest chapter in the county's election conspiracy journey. The Tuesday meeting featured a little extra drama as District 1 Supervisor Kevin Cry, an ally of MyPillow CEO and 2020 presidential election conspiracy theorist Mike Lindell, got served papers announcing a citizen's attempt to recall him while he was still seated on the dais. To understand the latest fracas, let's back up a few steps. The board, which consists of 4 hardline conservatives and 1 moderate conservative, which still means they're batshit crazy, voted in January to terminate its contract with Dominion Voting Systems because of conspiracy theories regarding the company in the 2020 presidential election. In March, the county voted to hand count all ballots instead of choosing a different electronic system for vote counting. Lindell, who was recently ordered to pay $5 million to someone who debunked one of his election fraud conspiracy theories, is a central figure in all this. He has argued that no electronic voting machine can be trusted, and he spoke with Cry earlier this year and said he's going to cover Shasta County financially if it faces any litigation over his mass hand counting of ballots. Do they know this guy went to jail for dealing cocaine and fraud? County Elections Chief Kathy Darling Allen has repeatedly warned that the board's decision to move to a hand count risks violating a variety of California election laws. Schmlaws. Both the January and March votes were 3-2, with Cry, Board President Patrick Jones, and District 5 Supervisor Chris Kellstrom comprising the majority. District 2 Sup Tim Garman, who is usually aligned with Cry, Jones, and Kellstrom, has cast dissenting votes alongside District 3 Supervisor Mary Reichert, the board's lone moderate. Or is it Rickert? It's Rickert. For the meeting on Tuesday, the board was asked to vote on hiring 5 new full-time employees in the elections office and 2 new employees in support services who will help the county implement the hand counting plan. The board also heard a presentation from Chief Fiscal Officer Aaron Bertrain, who presented the board with projected cost. Bertrain estimated that the county would be on the hook for at least an additional $3 million in expenses through the 2024-25 fiscal year, if not well more, with the county needing to hire more than 1,500 ballot counters for the 2024 presidential election. Several residents who spoke during the meeting's public comment section were horrified by the estimates. Shipkowski of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. An Eastern Ohio man told investigators that he tried to burn down an Ohio church because he wanted to prevent a drag show that was scheduled to take place there. Federal prosecutors allege in newly unsealed charges. Eamon Penny, a 20-year-old from Alliance who is a member of a White Lives Matter group that espouses racist and neo-Nazi views, tried to burn down the Community Church of Chesterland early on March 25th. And authorities allege that in court documents that were unsealed on Monday. Chesterland is a small community east of Cleveland. Now, as if no one knows, drag shows have become a target of conservative groups and leaders around the nation, with some claiming the art form sexually grooms children. Performers and event organizers, though, say the shows are innocent fun and that it's those who protest against them that are terrorizing and harming children and making them political pawns. According to the criminal complaint in the Ohio case, Penny said he tried to burn down the church using Molotov cocktails because he wanted to protect the children and stop the drag show. He also regretted that it didn't work, authorities said. The FBI said the church, which was unoccupied at the time, sustained minimal damage and had scorch marks on the front door. According to court documents, investigators found broken glass from a vodka bottle and a beer bottle, each containing a cloth-type material, along with a burnt matchstick and a blue plastic spray bottle filled with gasoline. Penny was arrested on March 31st and remains in custody. He's charged with violating the Church Arson Prevention Act, using fire to commit a federal felony, the malicious use of explosive materials, and possessing a destructive device. He faces up to 50 years in prison if he's convicted on all counts. Hamilton of the Los Angeles Times brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The long-standing efforts of a Getty heir to recover thousands of dollars she loaned to journalist and Twitter influencer Yashar Ali have intensified, with a debt collector now seeking to seize his future income and money he gets through online payment platforms like Venmo. According to papers filed in Los Angeles Superior Court, Ali owes well over $200,000 on loans made to him by Ariadne Getty, a philanthropist and granddaughter of oil tycoon J. Paul Getty. The online journalist's debt has ballooned after years of non-payment. Getty loaned Ali about $180,000 between 2012 and 2014. Ali has not disputed that Getty loaned him the money, nor that he defaulted on the initial loan after paying only about $1,000. After years of receiving few payments, Getty sued him in 2017 for the outstanding money plus interest. In 2019, a judgment was entered against Ali for $166,429, and the sum remains fully unpaid and with interest stands at $232,769, according to the motion that was filed. The debt collector is asking the LA Superior Court for the power to seize funds sent to Ali on various online platforms, including PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, GoFundMe, and Square. The debt collector also wants all rights to future payments that Ali may get from his newsletter on Substack, income he derives from Twitter, where he has more than 700 followers, or 700,000 followers. Is that true now? As well as future payments he may get from freelance journalism he publishes at HuffPost, MSNBC News, or New York Magazine, according to the filing. Now, Ali worked in Democratic politics, including for Governor Gavin Newsom, before rising to prominence on social media. His ascendance to the status of Twitter power broker was the subject of a widely read profile in the Los Angeles Magazine that asserted part investigative journalist, part gossip columnist, and part trusted confidant, Ali is uniquely 21st century media personality. But the 2021 article also noted Ali's tangled relationships with celebrities across the Golden State, including the unpaid loans from Getty, and stated that for a journalist who puts so much of his private life in the public sphere, he is secretive and resistant to scrutiny. Although Getty filed the lawsuit and secured the judgment against Ali, the judgment has been assigned or transferred to a third party, Capital Asset Protection. Arden Silverman, the owner of Calabasas-based Capital Asset Protection, echoed the Los Angeles Magazine article, telling the Times that Ali was more difficult than average to track down. Ali has no property and does not have any known local bank accounts, according to court papers. He seems to cast more of a shadow than your traditional person, Silverman said. Notwithstanding his persona on social media, he's been a bit more difficult to ascertain his whereabouts, adding, hiding in plain sight might be a good moniker. Silverman said he was less familiar with the underlying dispute that led to the judgment against Ali and was instead focused on simply obtaining the money now owed. By the time it gets to me, there's only a piece of paper that says A owes B, Silverman said. Well, I guess the big lesson is if you're going to take a loan from a Getty heir, you better pay it back before interest is accrued. I don't know, if it was me, I would have asked for a grant from a Getty heir instead of a loan, but that's just me. And that brings us to our break. So when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Camp and Vamp. If you're in the mood for a fresh take within the Dracula universe, the new movie Renfield might just be for you. To reacquaint R.M. Renfield's an English attorney who did some real estate business for the legendary Bloodsucker in the past, becoming his familiar, blessed with limited vampiric powers, in which to pursue his goals, one of which is the caring and mostly feeding of Drac. This one's set in New Orleans, where the Count is recovering after an attack by vampire hunters. Renfield is scoping out potential victims at touchy-feely self-help groups, not from those attending, but from their abusive partners and bosses. Renfield himself comes to believe that he too is in an abusive relationship with Dracula and wants to break free, parroting morphisms from the self-help group, dressing in pastel knitwear, and fixing up an apartment like the set of a millennial-era workplace sitcom. Bringing this character off is the underrated Nicholas Hoult, who's got the comedic chops to milk the scenario just described. Stealing the show from a support role, though, is Nicolas Cage as Dracula, who's been there before in 1988's Vampire's Kiss, and he really sinks his pointy teeth into the role. In a subplot that sometimes comes close to being overwhelming, Renfield, while on drac-feeding business, runs afoul of some local mobsters, leading him to team up with local policewoman Rebecca, played by an all-business Aquafina, with whom Holt develops some chemistry as they slice and dice their way through Nola's underworld on their way to dispatching, maybe, the thirsty Count himself. Ultimately, Renfield's an outrageous genre-clashing hoot, its excesses and misfires mostly excusable in the pursuit of laughs. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Ready for our little forest adventure?
Yes! So much waiting for me. Yeah, I wanna go outside. I wanna be.
We're here.
Whoa, that was fast.
There's a forest closer than you think. Find a park or forest near you and music inspired by nature at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by USDA Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Why, on one day, does every Major League Baseball player wear the same number?
I'm Floyd Patterson II, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with American Civil Liberties Union attorney Bill Newman.
On opening day 1947, Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier. He played his first game with the Brooklyn Dodgers. As he left for Ebbets Field that April 15th, he joked with his wife Rachel, who would be in the stands, "Just in case you have trouble picking me out, I'll be wearing number 42. 50 years later, on April 15, 1997, baseball retired number 42, and a few years later initiated Jackie Robinson Day. As for that first game in 47, Robinson wrote, "I did a miserable job." In truth, he didn't play a great game that day, although he quickly became a star and won the Rookie of the Year award. But let's not sugarcoat this. Robinson suffered horrifying racism, both inside and outside baseball. That said, Robinson changed baseball at a time when baseball was at the epicenter of American life, and so he changed the country. Although Jackie Robinson died from heart disease and diabetes at age 52 in 1972, his remarkable contributions to breaking down barriers of injustice live on. And so, every April 15th, we all, figuratively or literally, wear number 42.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union because freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1944. That was the day the Army National Guard seized the Chicago property of Montgomery Ward and removed its chairman, Sewell Avery. The Chicago-based company repeatedly refused to accept a National War Labor Board order to recognize the workers' union and abide by the board-negotiated collective bargaining agreements. After refusing the second board order, President Franklin Roosevelt ordered the Army National Guard to seize the company's central mail order house, retail store, and other related properties in the city. Avery was physically carried out of his office. Wartime no-strike pledges were in effect to avoid strikes or any disruption in war production. From a distance, it looked as if the president had triumphed the cause of labor in forcefully implementing the Wagner Act. Workers of the CIO United Mail Order Warehouse and Retail Employees Union had walked off the job over recognition issues on April 12th. Montgomery Ward officials argued again, as they had 2 years earlier, that they were not engaged in war production, held no government contracts, and that the dispute is not one which might impede the prosecution of the war by the board's own terms. But the government feared strike activity would only spread to other industries in Chicago and elsewhere. Local Teamsters and railway brotherhoods all supported the strike and refused to handle shipments to and from Ward facilities. The CIO union agreed to end the strike on the eve of the seizure. Others in the labor movement called FDR's move a hoax and a device to break strikes and get workers back on the job without any gains. Roosevelt issued a third seizure of Ward's facilities nationwide by the end of the year. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 50 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs in the low to mid-80s. Oh yes, a bit warmer than we've had. Mostly sunny throughout the day. Winds will be out of the northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Partly cloudy skies tonight with lows in the low 50s. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then a few passing clouds tomorrow. Otherwise generally sunny with highs in the mid to upper 80s. Winds light and variable. Grass pollen is rated moderate here in our little town of Rogue River, and something's getting me. It might be that. The air quality index, though, for the region is in the good range at 19 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is high at level 6, so take care. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.11 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 95%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 52 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 58 and partly cloudy. Rome is 72 and sunny. Kyiv is 58 and cloudy. Kabul is 60 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 72 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 58 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 64 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees and partly cloudy with a small craft advisory on the bay. And New York is 58 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Edith M. Lederer of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Russia's top diplomat warned that the European Union is becoming militarized at a record rate and aggressive in its goal of containing Russia. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov told a news conference he has no doubts that there is now very little difference between the EU and NATO. Lavrov said they recently signed a declaration, which he said essentially states that the 31-member NATO military alliance will ensure the security of the 27-member EU political and economic organization. He was apparently referring to the January 19th EU-NATO declaration on their strategic partnership, which calls Russia's invasion of Ukraine the gravest threat to Euro-Atlantic security in decades. It calls the present moment a key juncture of Euro-Atlantic security and stability and urges closer EU-NATO cooperation to confront evolving security threats, saying this will contribute to strengthening security in Europe and beyond. And it encourages the fullest possible involvement of NATO members that don't belong to the EU and EU members that are not part of NATO, but it does not state that NATO will ensure the security of the EU. Putin has long complained about NATO's expansion, especially toward his country, and partly used that as a justification for invading Ukraine. The Russian attack, however, sent fear through its other neighbors, and Finland joined NATO earlier this month, seeking protection under its security umbrella after decades of neutrality following its defeat by the former Soviet Union in World War II. While NATO says it poses no threat to Russia, the Nordic country's accession dealt a major political blow to Putin. Finland's membership doubles Russia's border with NATO, the world's largest security alliance. Sweden, an EU member, is also seeking NATO membership and is hoping for final approval soon. Lavrov was asked whether the war in Ukraine was a miscalculation since Moscow strongly opposed NATO's expansion, and the invasion sparked Finland's membership with Sweden next and Ukraine hoping for a roadmap to join. NATO never had any intention of stopping, the Russian minister replied, pointing at the EU-NATO declaration and actions in recent years that saw non-NATO members Sweden and Finland increasingly taking part in NATO military exercises and other actions that were meant to synchronize the military programs of NATO members and neutral states. Lavrov said Russia was promised on several occasions that NATO would not expand, but said those were lies. And I should remind folks, NATO never promised Vladimir Putin anything after the fall of the Soviet Union. And furthermore, NATO doesn't ask countries to join them. Countries ask NATO to be part of the alliance.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Steve LeBlanc of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Former New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, who led her country through a devastating mass shooting, will be temporarily joining Harvard University later this year, Kennedy School Dean Douglas Elmendorf said yesterday, Tuesday. Ardern, a global icon of the left and an inspiration to women around the world, has been appointed to dual fellowships at the Harvard Kennedy School. She will serve as the 2023 Angelopoulos Global Public Leaders Fellow and a Hauser Leader in the school's Center for Public Leadership beginning this fall. Ardern, who was just 37 when she became Prime Minister in 2017, shocked New Zealanders when she announced in January she was stepping down from the role after more than 5 years because she no longer had enough left in the tank to do it justice. She was facing mounting political pressures at home, including for her handling of the coronavirus pandemic, which was initially widely lauded but later criticized by those opposed to mandates and rules. Where did they get that idea? She said she sees the Harvard opportunity as a chance not only to share her experience with others, but also to learn. And we wish her luck and look forward to her work there. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme aux langues de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.